Entrepreneur Rap, episode 3.
Hey-o.
Coming at you, Brett Regan, David Brickley. Long drive last night.
It was a long drive there. It was a long drive home, but we got a lot of value. That was the best conference I've been to in some time.
So I went to the live LA Live TV conference in Los Angeles. So that's what we mean by the long drive. Drove from San Diego down to LA. Left about 5 a.m. Got there. Left at 5:15, got there at 8:15, but then left at 3, got back at 7.
Traffic all the way home.
So 7 hours on the road, about 7 hours on the ground. But all in all, it was worth the price of admission, which was free.
Which was free. They did a great job. SVG, big shout out.
All right, so for episode 3, as we always do, we're going to go down the topics on the Entrepreneur Wrap. And the number one topic every single show is the relevant business news that we want to talk about. And we ended up picking the same story, it seems like.
So for the audience out there, David and I tried to not communicate too much on the topics that we're choosing here. So we have kind of categories, and then we choose the articles and the advice. But what we found is when we talked about them earlier and decided we would kind of take away some of the genuine discussion that we had, and we want that to be live, fresh on the air. In this case, we chose the same story. We just found that out, and David's going to lead.
Yeah, so Mashable came out with an article. This was more of an op-ed, and it was a little dramatic in my taste. But the article simply read, Facebook failed America this year. Now it should kill the news feed. We just told you back on episode 2 how nice it is for us as entrepreneurs to set up Facebook as our RSS feed and how we are able to follow all the trades and all the news. But a lot of stories coming out from a lot of different news organizations blaming Facebook, not for the election necessarily, but for having no process in which to eliminate some of those onion type stories.
Yes. I looked at this. There's kind of like a 3-parter to what's going on with Facebook right now, but they have grown to such a size where they really have less of a responsibility as a tech startup or social media platform as they do as like a media conglomerate with a lot of eyeballs. So it wasn't just the fake news stories, which I guess Paul Horner, there was an interview from Washington Post with this guy. He was actually a Clinton supporter and was creating these fake news stories to think that everybody would put them out there and then fact check and be like, oh, that was actually a lie.
Right.
So one of the stories, he actually posted a fake Craigslist ad saying that he was paying Trump supporters to go and protest. And then he had a fake site that was like abc.co or something like that and put it out there. And Corey Lewandowski, the campaign manager for Trump, retweeted it. Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, retweeted it. And these were getting like 250,000 retweets of people believing that there was actually paid protesters. And these came across my feed. And when I saw them, I was kind of thinking like, shit, that's not good if it's true. These were going out across a lot of people's feeds.
Out of college, I worked at KFI AM 640 in LA, pretty much the Fox News affiliate, one of the top local stations in the country. And when you produce shows, you have to do a very good job of weeding out that nonsense. So even as a producer, it was tough to weed through, is this correct or not? You'd always have to have a verified source back it up. So even if it was on CNN, that doesn't mean it's true. You need to back it up with a Fox News or what have you, if multiple people are reporting it. But even if one established news organization was reporting something, you still had to find a way to do it.
I want to push pause on that video.
Mike, you're playing the media spotlight for some reason. We are not at that segment just yet. All right. But anyways.
So for Facebook, it's really difficult, I think, if you're in Zuckerberg's shoes, because when you start out, you say, this is the people's platform. You guys put out there whatever you want, and of course we're going to have decency standards where we're not going to allow, certain terrible things. We're not going to show child nudity, things that are pretty obvious that everyone would agree with. But at what point do you start choosing, and then Facebook, with as much power as they have, has a central authority to determine what is real and what is fake?
Well,
that's a lot of power.
And Twitter's starting to do
have
that, right?
too.
We saw all the backlash towards Leslie on SNL and all the the trolls that were going up against her, and they were deleting accounts.
That was the Ghostbusters
thing, and they were deleting accounts, and which you agree with, because there's no room for that nonsense, but it gets to a freedom of speech situation as well.
Right.
If you hate somebody or don't like somebody, should you necessarily be deleted from a certain platform because you believe a certain way or talk a certain way? So, it's if there's 100 people in the room and you say raise your hand if you have cable, or you say raise your hand if you listen to the radio every day. There's going to be, 50-50, what have you. But raise your hand if you're on Facebook. Those hands are going to start to come up. So all of a sudden, it's become the platform where everybody has it. So if there's a bunch of news on it, it's probably going to get to the masses.
Yeah, and if it was just this one singular event, I think it maybe wouldn't be as big of an issue for Facebook. But previously, maybe last month, somebody posted a pic of the person who's referred to as Napalm Girl, which was a Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph of like a young Vietnamese girl who was naked running in the streets after she'd been bombed and had burning skin, but they blocked out the photo. And there was a lot of backlash about people saying like, hey, this is supposed to be shocking.
Yeah.
This is, that's what it's meant to be. So who at Facebook is determining that this is somehow something that we can't show? And Facebook is saying like, hey, we're trying to deal with child nudity issues, and we can understand where you're coming from. But it really sparked a lot of conversation. And then even within the ranks at Facebook, the fact that Peter Thiel, who is a board member and one of the initial investors, spoke at the Republican National Convention in support of Trump, there was a lot of people inside of Facebook that basically said, we don't want him a part of this at all. So he's really got it coming from all angles. He's got internally people are upset.
And here's an example, too, of a headline that got retweeted 20,000 some odd times. FBI insider, Clinton emails linked to politics pedophile sex ring. And that's the stuff that people that just read the headline assume it's true. It's from yournewswire.com. Their whole thing is news, truth, and unfiltered. But it's an Onion type of website. Right. People are commenting, see, I knew Clinton, da-da-da-da-da. And that's a scary thought. And, I got buddies on Instagram that share this post and follow us and get 100 new pairs of fresh Jordans. And I'm like, dude, you really fell for that? Like, you're posting that? You're regramming that? So people do not read the article, and they don't know the difference from yournewswire.com and NPR.
Yeah, and it kind of made me feel bad about the way that I read articles, because we had a similar discussion on a previous episode where I talked about how I really like the fact that my Facebook feed is, all the stuff of my choosing, and I even mentioned specifically that I can look at a headline and get an understanding of what I want to read about it, or get the high level, which is just totally not true, because you can dig in, and the headline oftentimes can be a little more clickbaity, even on better publications.
And to your point, the caveat to this whole thing is all the major news organizations, like Mashable says in this article, are relying on a huge amount of viral Facebook traffic for their business model. So although they may know it is somewhat it's not right to do, they're going to teeter on that balance to try to get traffic, because that's their business model. That's how they make money. And the outrageous is going to get more clicks, and the clickbait is going to get more clicks.
I came across a pretty funny site. I think it maybe is called No More Clickbait or Death to Clickbait. Mm-hmm. But it basically aggregates all of the clickbait articles, and it'll say something like, it'll share an article that says, you won't believe Macaulay Culkin's net worth. And then they'll just put above it and they'll say $6 million. So they'll take all of these and save you the 45 seconds. And, did Kim Kardashian get in a fight with Kanye West on their vacation? And then they'll just say, no, they did not.
Well,
so
I think one way that I can think of if Facebook to fix this situation, at least they're not going to be able to fix all of it, but they're going to have verified type of accounts where this is an official news organization. So if you have, CNN, if you follow CNN on Facebook, most likely they're going to, have the journalistic integrity to have multiple sources and not share this and I may be wrong in there, but to share, that Clinton is in an FBI pedophile sex ring, pretty positive CNN.com's not going to have that on their front page. So they're going to have to weed out the newswire.com from the actual sources that
But doesn't that kind of put you in the same category? So Trump won the election. We're past that point. Yep. So it's pretty clear that most of the media outlets, if I'm on the alt-right, I would say, are you kidding me? You're talking about the fake news on the alt-right when CNN and ABC and NBC and everybody said that there was a 1% chance of Trump winning. I would go back and look at that and say, well, who's verifying that?
Yeah.
I mean, of course those are
And how
pollsters.
many people said, I'm not going to vote because it's already a foregone conclusion. My vote doesn't matter.
So on the alt-right side, which most of these articles, people are trying to say, well, it was the alt-right articles that helped get Trump. But if that is the case, on the other side, they would have a very clear argument that the ABCs of the world posting, certain things like who's really watching over them, if that demographic feels that their media needs aren't being served, they're going to go to the Bright Barts, which are right on the teetering edge of truth and non-truth. So I think it's a really sticky position to be in.
Well, when their whole trending topics feature came out and their news feed came out, Facebook originally had like a team of journalists that ran those accounts, decided what was trending, and they got rid. I don't know if you remember, they got rid of that whole department, which I think maybe bit them in this situation. But not so much of did these articles influence the election so much that it caused Hillary to lose or Trump to win, but there has to be something done to try to like declutter some of this mess, because right now, if something that's so ridiculous that you and I look at and say that's not, that's definitely not true, but it gets 30,000 retweets, there's people out there that take it as truth.
Yeah, it's the scary thing to me, if I'm Zuckerberg, is you have to hire a team of people to be the ones who understand and then disseminate the truth, and to go to a publication saying what you're saying isn't true, but what these people are saying is true, and then you become, for this 1 billion person population in the world, to say this is the truth and this is the not truth.
But in the history of media, when there was actual hard newspapers or hard magazines, it was really tough for you and I, if we're broke, to try to compete with the New York Times and act like, see, these newspapers are the same, which one's real, which one's not. But now, $5, you can start a website right now called realnews.com or what have you, and you can post on Facebook and you can go viral with it, and it looks exactly the same as the actual news organizations that have journalistic integrity. So there has to be a way to not sit there and pick that's real, that's fake, but you have to be able to weed out some of these, sites that pop up overnight and all of a sudden become the top articles.
It'll certainly be something to watch as we look forward with Facebook's growing influence in media.
All right, so we're going to move on to what we learned this week as entrepreneurs. Brett, we'll throw it to you.
So I'm going to take something that I learned from this conference, and it was almost like going to group therapy with people that are doing some of the same thing, because multiple people talked about the highs and lows of this is live and everything is on the line this one moment. So,
and to back up a little bit, this is more about live TV, broadcasting behind the scenes, and then also the transition into streaming, Facebook Live, and some of the new platforms.
Right. So a lot of the people that were on the panels were producers for Fox and other networks who have done live events, big time sporting events, Super Bowls, award shows. So one of the gentlemen basically said, the highs that I get from this is that every single time I go to a project, my career is on the line, because no matter what, at the hour mark, we have to be live on the air and everything has to run well. And if it doesn't, it's a huge problem. And there are many times when there are things that happen 20 minutes, 30 minutes before that really jeopardize getting on the air on time.
Yep.
And as we've moved more into a live space, that's the anxiety that I get every time we do that. But at the end of it, when things go well, it's really kind of a cool feeling. So it was nice to be around a lot of people. And what I learned from that is, if you get around people that are doing some of the same things as you are, you'll really start to understand that people are experiencing a lot of the same things that you're experiencing.
Right.
So that's what I learned. We're not in a vacuum here. What we're doing is really unique in our minds, and it is for a lot of reasons, but the overall themes and the fears and challenges that other people in this industry face are going to be a lot similar to what we do.
To your point at that conference, what I learned, and this again seems pretty obvious at face value, but they talked a lot about rehearsal and test, and nobody ever comes to you at the end of a production or event and say, Brett, you did a lot of great pre-planning. I mean, your rehearsals were right on point. They don't do that. They just say, hey, great show, and they don't realize all the stuff that goes into it, especially from the rehearsal or the pre-planning part of it. So just having SOPs, standing operating procedures, making sure everybody's trained up and ready to go. And again, just practice makes perfect. And know, what do we do if A happens? What if we do if B happens? What's our backup plan if the backup plan doesn't work? Those are all the things I think we try to do. But again, it was nice to see other people going through the same thing.
Yeah. I think that our clients have done a pretty good job, for the most part, though, of thanking us after a big gig, because it's such a newer space where like a live booth activation that goes on social. People have been pretty good about it, but yeah, I really don't think that they understand the weeks of planning and stressing and doing tests here in our studio and then going on site 2 days early and doing it again and again and again, so that by show night it seems like everything's super casual because we are incredibly prepared. So I like the fact that
anxiety you talked about. If you are prepared, it just goes down to a whole different level. If you're not prepared, that anxiety shoots through the roof. But if you have a graphic in an award show made for every possible winner, no matter who wins, I'm good. I got it.
Right.
We prepared that, and that took a lot of preparation, but you're able to know that you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah. And I get family members a lot of times before we do a big event. They'll say, "Are you excited?" No. And I always say, I'll be excited when it's over. When it's over and it's gone well and the client is super happy, that's when I get excited. Everything up until then, it's, anxiety maybe, not stress, but just, making sure that all of the preparation that we went through works, but then there's going to be variables and outliers and things that occur on site that are going to mess you up. So,
and to that
like
point,
you said, B and C plans are important.
Yeah, and the preparation, you find that out. Like, thank God we did a run through. Thank God we did a rehearsal.
Thank God we bought a ton of extra X or whatever stuff to, when they inevitably
I remember
go
at an
down.
award show, we just assumed that we can upload everything to Box, but we were using Samsungs, and whatever reason, there wasn't a Box app. That little things like that you would have showed up.
Or little things like they don't have your, internet at all, and they have to go to a plan B, or the internal servers don't have the capabilities.
Or power doesn't show up until an hour before, so you have to do run-throughs without power. Yeah, it's
Right.
all bad. All right, moving on to...
So what we're reading, David, what are you reading?
You start.
I'm starting. Yeah. So I'm still on The Snowball. It's another pretty big book. It's the life and biography of Warren Buffett, really great guy. There's a few things that I take from it. He's got a super positive attitude in general. It sounds like his entire life, he's just always kind of, tinkered with things and tried new things and always had a positive, optimist outlook. At the same time, he's incredibly conservative when it comes to spending money. His cash reserves, compared to anyone else in the world, anybody that earns money through investment would look at his cash reserves and feel like he's totally losing out on opportunity.
Yeah.
But he'll sit around for years at a time with huge cash reserves, waiting until he's feeling like there's cheap stuff out there to go and buy.
Right.
So I think I take a lot of that of just him not really looking at industry trends so much. He's got a philosophy for how he invests. He looks at individual companies, and when he feels like it's a good deal, he goes and buys them with cash. He doesn't borrow money. So I like a lot of those, qualities of his investment strategy.
So much like you, I think as we continue this podcast, we'll continue to read the same thing and update you on where we are in the chapters. But Jim Collins, Good to Great, like I mentioned last show, now on chapter 3. And once again, trying to reverse engineer yourself a little bit. I knew the show was coming up, like, you know what, let me knock out a chapter, which is always good to have a little bit of motivation there. But I know you've read the book or read some of it, and sometimes you and I talk about certain terms that he uses, and it's tough. So I wrote this one down in chapter 3. He talks about the Stockdale paradox, and essentially what that means is retaining faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time, confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. And I love that.
This is hilarious. So right under that, I knew you were going to talk about the optimist did worse, like the Colonel's description, because I think this came from where
he was in a POW camp for 8 years, I think.
Right.
Stockdale,
so they interviewed a prisoner of war, and he basically said, like, what are some maybe business lessons that can be pulled from this? And it's funny that, David, you picked this out because I had the exact same thought. One of the things he mentioned was that the optimists actually did worse.
Because they always thought they were coming out Thanksgiving or Christmas were going to get let out.
So that was the example they gave, was like, hey, we're going to be out by Thanksgiving. Hey, we're going to be out by Christmas. Eventually, after being let down over and over and over, those guys, lost it.
Lost it from a broken heart, he said.
Right.
Yeah.
So the guys that said, hey, we'll get out eventually, but they didn't put a particular timestamp on it. They didn't think, hey, we're going to be out of here really soon. They had faith that they would get out, but they're like, hey, it's going to be a long road.
Yeah. And, another thing he said to kind of juxtapose the Stockdale paradox was, all good to great companies begin the process of finding a path to greatness by confronting the brutal facts of their current reality. It really comes down to practicality and like what the industry is telling you. But I think, not to pat ourselves on the back, we did a pretty good job of listening to our prospects and clients of where the industry is going and what they want, and be able to shift and be nimble from that. But even going back to that conference, I saw a lot of people, a lot of older vets that have been in the TV and broadcast space for probably 20, 30 years. They're kind of fighting against the Facebook Lives of the world. They're fighting against people cutting the cord and going streaming. And they're still looking at social media as this little baby thing that people talk about that's important, but it's not really as important as TV. Well, you're going to wake up in 5, 6 years and have a totally different reality. So I think it's important to, and those good to great companies he talks about did a really good job of saying, it's going this way, so let's just stop what we're doing there and move that direction.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, is just, being brutally honest about, hey, in the space, and doing a little bit of an autopsy at a, continual basis about A, the company, and then B, I think yourself, to say, what are we really great at and what are we not so good at?
Yep.
Do we want to get really good at the things we're not so good at, or should we completely cut that off and focus on what we're good at? And I think you can do that as a individual as well, to think, what am I really good at, and what do I need to maybe supplement with another employee, because I don't want to go and get good at this particular thing.
Right.
I'd rather find somebody who's great at it. So I think maybe kind of stripping the ego out from your business and from yourself, and learning like the areas where you can succeed.
And in this chapter in particular, they were talking about a grocery store. They compared 2 grocery stores, I think Kroger and somebody else. Again, you always forget the second one. But the 2 grocery stores, and they saw that people really wanted the supermarket experience. They wanted to be able to get their Band-Aids and their shampoo and their deodorant and their bananas and their meat all in one place. And they saw that trajectory. Both of the grocery stores kind of tested that philosophy. They both understood that's what people wanted, but one said, that's crazy, we're not going to do that. And the other said, in the next 2 years, let's close all of our stores and make these new supermarket stores, because that's what people want. And one went under, and one got 3,000 times more revenue than the other. So those are the things where you have to kind of move when you need to.
And that takes a lot of guts.
Oh, yeah.
Because to look at a trend when you may be successful currently, and say, hey, we're not going to be successful in several years, so right this second, we're going to have to lose money, spend money, and then, get to a place where we're better off in the future. And when we talk about Blockbuster model all the time,
exactly.
Blockbuster knew that Netflix was coming. They knew that Redbox was coming. They knew that that was a problem. But
they
at
could
no
have
point,
bought them, or they could have made a competitor immediately. They were a $5 billion company.
And they had all the brand name.
Yeah.
If they'd have done that, they would have wiped everybody out, and they would have been a huge conglomerate. But I think when they looked at it like, well, we don't want to have to shut down any of our stores. We don't want to have to go and get another round of investment to figure this out. It's not really our core competency. And they're dead. They're completely gone because they...
And Netflix is worth $36 billion now.
Right. So I don't know if that was an ego thing from the company standpoint, where they were like, look, people aren't going to want to just buy them. They're going to want to come in and buy the popcorn and buy the soda and pick out their movie and talk to people about how they are. And it's not true at all. So, yeah, I think it takes a lot of guts, and that was a cool story from that book.
So moving to our tech tip, one thing that we started, one of our first, I think, platforms that we started to use that really allowed us to take a new step in a new direction was HipChat. HipChat and Slack are pretty much the same platform, but just collaborating with your team members, real-time communication, even get your clients involved on certain projects, especially live events, and able to hop in a room and have that real-time communication, share files back and forth, share videos back and forth. Overall, you can look it up, but I think for us, we still use it daily in the office when we want to share articles with each other, or hit somebody up quickly without yelling across the room. And HipChat's been something we've used from the onset.
And best deal in town.
Yeah.
I think $2 per user right now for the professional, or maybe that's everybody. But we use a lot of different platforms. $2 is a total steal for this. Don't tell them I said so, but eventually they're going to be bought and taken into somebody else's platform, or they're going to have to raise their prices, because there's a lot of companies that are running on HipChat as a primary communication tool that would pretty much have to spend, maybe 10 times more if they up the price. So that's a great tip. My tech tip, kind of goes back to what I mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, where during my work-life balance, I was trying to do a better job of going to bed on time, so that I could wake up earlier. And then out of nowhere this morning, as I'm snoozing through my alarms, the new iOS update introduced a Bedtime app.
I saw that.
Which I hadn't seen before. You can see a little screenshot of it here if you're watching on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
But it essentially says, what days do you want to wake up, and, what time do you need to be up? How many hours of sleep do you want to get? and then, okay, here's your bedtime, and then we're going to give you a reminder of the bedtime, 15, 30, or 45 or an hour beforehand, which is exactly what I was talking about. So at 9 p.m.
If you want to wake up at 7 a.m. instead of just minus 8 hours, you're just saying this helps you because it reminds you like, hey, that 8-hour block is coming up. You need to start getting ready for bed.
Yeah, so 6 a.m. is when I'd like to be up every single day of the week. We'll see how that goes. I just set it up today.
New goal.
However, but it just says, you want to be up at 6 a.m. How many hours of sleep do you want? I want to go with 8. So, all right, well, you have to be asleep at 10
p.m., yeah.
And when do you want to have a reminder that it's almost bedtime? And I set it for an hour before, and that's exactly what I described as the process that I wanted. So an hour before bed, I can
go
say,
into your nighttime
routine. Change clothes and, brush my teeth and get whatever handled that I have to before it's actually time. And then once I get into bed, phone's off, lights off, even if I have to lay around. So this is a new goal, but I do think it was kind of a smart update. It works with all their current features, but for me, I think it'll be helpful, and it worked on a work-life balance.
And if you want to get crazy with it, Fitbit, if you ever choose to wear one of those, they actually monitor how much you're moving and tossing and turning at night to kind of see how good your sleep is. Because you can sleep for 8 hours, but if you're tossing and turning every 10 minutes, you're having a restless sleep and you're wondering why you're groggy. So that takes it to a new level if you enjoy this tech. But let's start, one step at a time, right?
Yep. So current business goals. Why don't you start off, David?
Current business goals. Talked the last podcast about building out the Facebook Live training process and SOPs, which is still a current goal. But also, we have some new hires coming on board in the next few weeks. So really building out and mapping out the next 40 days, the how-to tutorials and the training programs that we don't have in place right now. Want to just dig into that, build out our live director SOP and training programs as well, because with our live events, especially remote, we have certain things that people know in their head. We just need to be able to download that and put it into procedures. So that's going to be the focus over the next couple of weeks.
Very cool. So mine, kind of along the same lines, I guess, is develop more relationships. So at the live TVLA, there were a few people. They said, what is your secret sauce? What is your secret to success? And 2 or 3 of them said, just, having great relationships with a bunch of different people so that when you show up and inevitably something is wrong, you've got people that you can rely on and say, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z, and they can be there. But I think you can look at that also just in terms of hiring new employees, having additional vendors. We talked to a power supply person, consultants, and really, I look at developing relationships on the sales side is exactly what we do as well. So reaching out to people, getting a relationship with people that could potentially become clients, people that could potentially become employees, consultants, vendors, what have you. The more people that you meet and know in the space, the better off you are, so that, hey, we got a project coming up, we know we can go to X, Y, and Z and get it done.
Well, one good way to look at that is if you have any friends or family that are in certain industries that you've called on them before. So for me, my dad has worked in construction his whole life. He's built houses from the ground up. So at our office, when we wanted to build out a office portion into our warehouse, it was great to be able to call him, like, what's about the right price? Like, 'cause if you just go to any dude, you feel like you're gonna be screwed. Same with a mechanic. If you have a friend or family member, like, how much does it cost to change a radiator out? This guy's telling me it's gonna cost $4,000. Like, no, dude, he's screwing you. So even in those little things in the way of life, you can understand how important that is. So in business, totally agree. Even with this Facebook Live show, we wanted to start building out a live aspect of our company, and we had a contact with one of our clients who ran TV broadcasts, and I said, what's kind of the starter kit to get ready to be able to do Facebook Live and stream? And he gave some amazing advice in a 20-minute phone call that must have saved us hundreds of hours in research that we would have bought all this equipment and all these adapters, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't have gave us what we want. So he gave us one company that he really recommended. We went straight to that company, bought the equipment, and here we are. So those, I agree, relationships and being able to pick up a phone call at any given time is super important.
Yeah, and even if these relationships sometimes need to be paid. Yeah. A lot of times we want to make sure that people are compensated for their time, because if we're asking someone for advice, even if it's a 30-minute phone call, it took them a long time to be able to get that information and to have that knowledge, and it's really valuable. So, it's not always just you're asking for favors, because sometimes that can feel awkward. It's a lot easier to send an email and say, hey, would love to, schedule some consulting time.
Yep.
Let me know your rate. We'll lock it in. And oftentimes that winds up being a lot more productive. So overall, I think we do a good job of this, but, definitely want to do a better job of just building and maintaining really great relationships.
All right, so let's move to the work-life balance segment of the show.
So I'll start off here. It's kind of simple. I like to keep all my work-life balance stuff simple, but I want to schedule a little more time on a weekend to call the family. It's always something that gets pushed back. I think, I need to check in with my mom, and then I just don't for like 2 weeks. And I know that when anybody in my family or my friends reach out and call me or text me and say, hey, what's up? I'm like, oh, that's nice. They reached out.
Right.
And sometimes I feel like I don't reciprocate, or I could do better about just reaching out to everybody, checking in. So friends and family, a little more time, just a quick phone call, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, can mean a lot. And it's, it's good for me too, to just get out of my own head.
Love it. So I don't think I did mine last week. So I want to go with the one I was going to say last week. And that was simply, I'm in an adult basketball league. I really enjoy that. That's every Monday night. I really want to just sit down, especially being here in San Diego, become a tourist, if you will, and write down 10 to 20 things I'd like to do in the next 3 to 6 months, whether that be hiking or water sports or boxing classes or what have you. So I think just take the time to write those things down. So at any point, if you have a free afternoon on a Saturday, like, what do I want to do? Oh, let me go to my list. I think that can help.
And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear that you had a slam dunk in your last basketball game.
Yeah, it's hitting my prime here at 29.
Were you like right on somebody? Was it like a total
Oh, no, not in the game.
Okay.
This is before the game. This is in warm-ups.
Right on.
But I've dunked before.
Still count?
I've dunked before, but usually it's like every 40th time if everything goes right. But had a little spring in my step. That's when you get older too. Like every third game, you have a little spring in your step, but the other games, you're just like, your legs feel like cement. So.
And around the office, sometimes we'll lower the basketball hoop that we have in here to about 6 foot, and I'll jam. And then I've got 3 weeks of recovery. Got a knot in my shoulder,
you're trying
and
to
my
throw
legs
it down
hurt.
like Westbrook, and you get hung, and then you throw your shoulder out.
Got to be aggressive.
All right, Mike. So we're going to move on to our media spotlight now. I will throw it to Brett Regan, and what are we looking at here?
For the people on Facebook Live, you had a little bit of a preview earlier in the show during our discussion about Facebook.
No biggie.
Excuse me.
Jeez.
So this is a video clip from CNN Money. It's really the first video of Warren Buffett speaking about the election. So let's listen to it. So I was interested in hearing that because I am reading the Warren Buffett book, and he was pretty outspoken in favor of Hillary Clinton. So that segment was him, essentially just discussing the negative ads that were going, and it was nice to get a little perspective too from someone who's much older. I'm 32 years old, and it seems to me that most of the elections during my lifetime, maybe this one was worse, but have been terrible with negative ads. I grew up in Tennessee, and even the local elections were just trashing each other really terribly. So it's kind of fun to hear somebody
I really
at that
think
age.
that all negative ads, obviously you can never get away from, what are they called? When super PACs. A super PAC can obviously always make a negative ad, and it's freedom of speech and whatever. There should never be an ad or not be allowed, I'm Hillary Clinton and I approve this message. Get it out. Get it out of politics. All negative ads.
How would you
not agree with that?
Well, because who's going to determine whether it's negative or not? That kind of comes back to the same thing with Facebook. Is at some point you have to have somebody saying,
okay, focus on
this is a negative.
Focus on only what you're going to do and never talk about the other candidate.
Sure, but then you're saying
just don't. You can't talk about the other candidate because they can't.
So the
defend
candidate
themselves.
can't talk about the other candidate. But anything that's a super
Donald
PAC
Trump is going to hurt our country. I support this message.
But you're okay. You're okay with a super PAC being able to do that.
I don't know how you're going to police a super PAC.
Right.
But
if
the candidates can't say I support this message on an ad talking about the other candidate. Just focus on what you're doing. Focus on what you can do with the country. Focus on the issues. But don't tell me how terrible it's going to be if the other person gets elected and not you. I just think there should be some type of checks and balances there.
So I think that would be very difficult for an election like this. So if
you're the official candidacy or the official candidate for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton cannot talk about Donald Trump in a commercial.
So these are very important topics for right now. With Citizens United was on the ballot to potentially go back up and be looked at.
Right.
And there's a lot of those questions circulating on how you should be able to do campaigns. But let's say when Comey came out and said Hillary Clinton is going to be under investigation again, could that have been used by the Trump camp and saying Hillary Clinton? But that's just a fact.
Don't talk about the other candidate. Talk about what you're going to do.
So you can only. It would be nice. I agree. I also think people talk
because you're right. You can't say, well, the Comey thing's a fact, but telling him that he's a misogynist is not a fact.
Right.
That would be impossible. But if you just put a line right down the middle, said you can focus on your policy, you can focus on your.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I think in debates especially, that would be so nice if you could never talk about anybody else, and the only thing that you could say is talk about your policies.
I think to Warren Buffett's point, the reason why people are like, I could never vote for Trump, I could never vote for Hillary, was because of all that negativity, and they focus so much on the negativity. They say, it can't be worse than her, so I'm going to vote for him, and vice versa. But yeah, this year, and he's right, this election, more so than any other one, was just awful.
Yeah, and what I can't agree with what he said is this election.
And he's the one that donated to Hillary's camp, so he's pretty much saying, hey, Hillary.
He was an Obama and Hillary supporter.
But he's
for a
pretty
long
much
time.
saying, I gave you money, but you still did bad things in terms of, not bad things.
He repeated a couple times without really saying it, but he said, I had two choices.
Right.
And I voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
So I don't think it was a glowing endorsement of Hillary, but this was probably the election where actual policies were spoken about the least amount that I can remember.
Yep.
So Donald Trump, historically said as little as possible about what he was going to do specifically in terms of policies other than repeal Obamacare, build a wall. But the build a wall, it was nothing specific of, here's the borders and here's how we're going to do it. With repeal and replace Obamacare, it was not, we're going to repeal it completely and then replace it with these certain things.
Exactly.
So it really became attacking the other person's policies. This person was in favor of the war, this particular Obamacare policy, but it was never about my policies specifically differ in these ways. And I think that sucks because now somebody's in the White House, and it would have been the case on either side, but maybe a little more on the Trump side, where we just don't know what the actual policies are. We've elected the person instead of the policies, and I think there's a lot of people maybe that even voted for Trump that expect a certain policy to come out of his presidency, and they're going to be deeply disappointed just as much as the people who didn't vote for him are going to be disappointed with certain things that come up as well. I
totally agree. So for my media spotlight, it's Foot Locker Week of Greatness. Let's roll it.
Lighten it up.
Dude, I love it. So I think they had 3 different ones for this week. They've done this over the years, but I want to meet the producer and writer of these commercials, because finding a way to have the athlete or the talent talk about the elephant in the room. Last year, they had D'Angelo Russell give advice to a rookie, and he threw the rookie's cell phone away, of course, going back to D'Angelo recording one of his teammates. In this same campaign, Ja Rule now drives an Uber, and he talks about how you're not always going to be great. You have to make sure that you respect greatness. And then Carmelo Anthony defends his greatness, even though he doesn't have any championships, and people are saying, are you really great? Like, yeah, I won a national championship. Like, yeah, but you never won a NBA championship. Anyways, I think anytime I see somebody able to joke about that type of stuff from a talent or celebrity standpoint, it's refreshing, and this campaign is really cool.
Yeah, anybody that can be self-effacing like that, it makes them immediately more likable.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady doesn't necessarily have like a likable personality off the field. He kind of seems like celebrity status and a little closed off. So I think this probably helps his brand for sure.
All right, so moving on to the Q&A and advice section, I'll throw it to you.
So this goes on a little bit with the maintaining relationships, but the advice that I would give to anyone that is an entrepreneur now or looking to be is network. It's not a dirty word. I got into this business and felt like when I heard networking, it was just a bunch of people
handing business cards,
schmoozing and handing business cards and like trying to leech off of each other. And I've been proven wrong at a lot of these different, conferences and seminars where there's just a lot of people that want to get out and meet others because they work a lot. And they want to be able to talk to people in the same space. I've met a lot of just really great, cool people that I would hang out with as friends. So get out and network. It's not a sleazy thing. It's usually pretty fun. And it gets you a little bit better about walking up to somebody you don't know, shaking their hand and be like, hey, what's going on? This is my name. What do you do? And I think that helps in every facet of life just to be able to communicate with people better and walk right up. So that's what I would do is get out there, meet people, shake hands, build relationships.
Rob Shaw, who runs the sports live department over at Facebook, he was at that conference as well, and he said something that really hit home. I ended up tweeting it, but he said, I was hired 3 years ago, and Facebook didn't even have a video player back then. So I don't know where we're going to be in 3 years, which is an incredible thing if you really look at it at face value, and tells you how quickly things change. I think we mentioned on the podcast last time that, just in an NFL season, NFL social media policy comes out, Vine is no longer there, Instagram stories comes up, and it's a whole different marketplace. But for Facebook to go from a platform that you couldn't even upload a video to now the Facebook Live being its own media conglomerate that people can broadcast from, that's a pretty incredible thing that can happen in 36 months.
Yeah, and that was probably the quote of the conference, because
Yeah.
when he said it, you and I looked at each other, and it was kind of just this, holy
right.
shit,
Yeah,
man,
it's
that's
crazy.
incredible. Because sometimes it feels like we've been around for 10 years, and other
Right.
times it feels like 6 months.
Right.
But to realize that, yeah, Facebook didn't have video, Instagram didn't have video.
And to know that as your North Star of like, we have no idea, even as a company or as an industry, we have no idea what we're going to be in 2 years. And to know that and not be freaked out by that, and just know we're going to do our best to, wiggle around and make it happen.
just
But
bob and weave and be flexible.
But if Facebook didn't even have video 3 years ago, and now they're Facebook Live, imagine what's going to happen in 3 years. It's just incredible.
Very cool.
Moving on to the quote of the week. My quote of the week is, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Your quote.
My quote is, if you can't feed a team with 2 pizzas, it's too large. And this is from Jeff Bezos. So the reason why I liked this is because even as you grow into like a large company, if you have small teams working on projects,
sense, right.
it'll be a lot better. So I like this. I mean, Amazon has how many people, who knows, working for them. But whenever he puts together a team for a particular project, it needs to be small, or else
deep,
you can't tell 200 people to work on a special new
Yeah.
project. It's got to be 5 or 10 people to get in there.
There it is, Entrepreneur Wrap Episode 3. We urge you to subscribe to us on iTunes. Also, feel free to email us anytime, ask any questions or thoughts. I'm David at STN.digital. You are?
Brett at STN, or
Need to
Brett
think
Regan,
about-
Brett Regan STN.
No, that's your Twitter, your email.
Oh, Brett at STN.digital.
BRETT at STN.digital. And then follow us on Twitter. I'm going to also tweet out those 3 Foot Locker videos so you guys can go check them out. But Facebook Live, thank you, and iTunes, thank you. That'll do it.